money for your commitment. A very popular topic. It applies to almost everyone across every content area in chat, and we're delighted to have you all here this afternoon. If any seats are still available, please do move in. I can't really see many, but I'm sure we'll have a few more people joining us as the session continues. So like I said, we're thrilled to have you here. We're going to start off today's session by inviting Ariel Reyes up on stage to do a commitment progress report for you all. So could you please join me in welcoming Ariel to the stage?
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me?
Oh yeah, good.
Hi, my name is Ariel Reyes, and I'm a current graduate student, dual degree candidate, Master's in Business Administration and Master's in Public Health. I am also the founder of Compass Supreme Brigades, which is an organization that delivers sustainable healthcare development to communities in Central America. Back in 2011, I traveled to Panama through the Yen region, where with Global Brigades, we concluded that gastrointestinal problems affected dramatically the production rate of the region. So I set out to do a commitment back in CGI U 2011 in UC San Diego, where I set out to reduce gastrointestinal problems in the area by 50%. By implementing public health, community workers, and local health campaigns that promote healthcare education and also develop infrastructure, I'm now serving over 650 Panamanian citizens. Also, thanks to the generous donations of many individuals, I was able to fundraise over $300,000, which have now mobilized over 150 college undergraduate students and young professionals to develop infrastructure and build composite trails. All my efforts have resulted in the reduction of gastrointestinal problems in the Yen by 35%. So, thank you. All of this would have not been possible without the help of the Clinton Global Initiative University. So I encourage every one of you to go out there and let's change the world one commitment at a time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ariel. That was so inspiring. I got shivers. It's wonderful. We have a wonderful lineup of speakers for you this afternoon who are going to take a deeper dive into the art of raising funds for your commitments. And I am so excited to invite to the stage Premal Shah, the president of KIVA. Please help me in welcoming him.
Thanks, Libby and Ariel. That's an amazing story. I just want to start by show of hands. How many of you actually have an idea, a concept, and you're actually now executing on the concept? Okay. And then how many of you are gated by the amount of funds or resources that you can raise? Okay. Now, how many of you, of those of you who have a social enterprise or concept now that you're trying to execute, how many of you have an earned income stream? So a model through which if you could raise money in patient enough basis, at some point, either you or the beneficiaries that you work with can pay back that money. Okay. Okay, great. So, and then finally, just how many of you have been to the KIVA website? Okay, good. So, my name is Premal, and I serve as the president of KIVA.org. KIVA is a crowdfunding website that allows people to make 0% interest loans in $25 increments for social enterprises all around the planet. And I'm going to cover three things today. First is, if you're a social enterprise that could actually one day pay back a patient 0% interest loan, in order to, you need the money right now to get going and get some type of operating scale, how you can use a crowdfunding platform like KIVA. If you are someone who works with end beneficiaries either here in the US or around the planet, and for example, you provide a product or service that would be more affordable if you could finance it with 0% interest loans, I'm going to explain how you can use KIVA and crowdfunding for that. And then finally, KIVA itself is a nonprofit, and we've been around for 8 years. And for the first 14, 15 months, it was brutal. It was like crickets and Tumblr, where we write into websites on foundations. They'd say, no letters of requests, please, and we'd still write them, and no one would write us back, and it was really difficult to raise money. So I wanted to kind of talk about some of the things that we did to alleviate our own funding constraints in the very early days. But before I got started, I thought that it'd be helpful to share a little bit about my journey, starting when I was a sophomore in college. How many of you guys are sophomores here? All right. So I don't know if you guys are in the middle of your sophomore slump, but I was. I was a sophomore at Stanford University, and it somehow, my friends from freshman year, they kind of moved all over the place. Classes weren't as interesting. It rained a lot that year for some reason. And I was lucky enough to find a professor who allowed me to sit in on a class, and he basically changed my life, because that's what I learned about microfinance. And I was born in India. I was really concerned about poverty globally and how people's capacity far exceeds people's opportunity all around the planet just by where you're born, the birth lottery. And it was always confusing to me. And I really enjoyed kind of the idea of a bottoms-up market approach to poverty elimination. So luckily, through that class, I ended up studying as much as I could about microfinance and started doing independent research. And then I went to India to do a project, and that was the peak of my college career, my senior year, to look at the Self-Employed Women's Association in India. And it was fantastic. I really learned so much just by being alongside, I think, the work that was really my heart. And I don't know if I really made much of an impact through my thesis, but I know it was a really important time to just be near the population that I wanted to work alongside. And like a lot of people who graduated, I went into the private sector, and I became a management consultant in New York. And my happiness, sorry, so this is my age right here. This is how alive I felt. Sorry. And it plummeted. I guess the good thing is I learned how to make nice PowerPoint presentations. But I think for me, what I realized is it's really exciting to build something. And luckily enough, the kid down the hall from me was someone who founded PayPal. And I ended up literally joining him when it was really early on, and it was really incredible to actually work at a technology company that could help people send payments back and forth. At first, I didn't think I was interested, but it was so interesting to see the kind of problems it solved. Two strangers on eBay who don't trust one another, able to actually trade with each other. And so that's where I learned about the transformational nature of technology, but then it became a big company, it got acquired by eBay, and my happiness plummeted again, because I felt like I was a cog in a big machine. It was like a 10,000 employee company. And that's where they let me go back to India for a sabbatical. And that's where I was testing the idea, wouldn't it be interesting if up on eBay's website, you can make a microloan to someone. Instead of buying something, you can make a $100 microloan. You hit the Buy It Now button. I was in India volunteering. I'd get the money via my PayPal ATM debit card, pull it out in Indian rupees, and then give it to her. And then over the course of, say, 12 months, either myself or when I went back home to the US, one of my friends would just collect it, just at 0% interest. Would this work? Well, it turns out this is illegal, according to the eBay legal department. They didn't know I was an employee at the company because I had like this anonymous handle, like Salsavoy20. But they took down this listing, and it was really difficult to do, but together with a few other people, we helped start KIVA. And KIVA is essentially this type of idea, which is in small increments, you can lend money to high-impact social enterprises all around the planet, maybe some of yours, who are working with end beneficiaries like Ogla here. And in this case, she was raising $350 for a beehive. And as she's able to earn income from honey, she can then turn around, repay Honeycare, and Honeycare can repay us. And it makes these beehives more affordable for subsistence farmers in Kenya. So that's an example of the effort. And since starting, KIVA has really grown. We got really lucky with some media breaks and things like that. It's just crossed $500 million. Loans made every 4 seconds, and 3 out of 4 loans go through the site. So that's a little bit about the amount of money that's going through the site. I think it's like $1 million every 2 or 3 days. It's being erased from the site. So this is a resource engine for all of us who are doing social good, where there's a potential way to pay it back on a very patient basis. All right, so we recently launched an effort called KIVA U, which is for student leaders and educators in campuses, and there's 3,000 schools, universities that have already created their own KIVA U club, and I invite you to check that out. So let me just get into like a case study of how it works. We launched this website for U.S. entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, called KIVA Zip. And I'm going to show you how it works. So for example, if you would want a 0% interest loan, basically you can come up to the site, we'll start you off with a $5,000 loan, and if you pay it back, it's like the eBay website. If you sell something and you actually ship it, you get a feedback score, and then you can sell more and more. It's the same system here. If you pay that back, you can qualify for a higher loan, and then a higher loan, and then a higher loan. And here's an example. This is a group of students that go to, as part of the Holt, one semi-finalist round for the Holt Prize. They had a savings product in India. They're an early social enterprise. It's really hard for them to actually afford the travel to get back to India. I vouched for them just because I trusted that if the Holt Prize actually, if they made it to semi-final rounds, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are thinking about business planning competitions, I believe in them. So I vouched for them. They basically were able to raise a $2,000 starter loan, and then as they pay that back, that goes up to $4,000. And you can see it's crowdfunded by 52 people all around the internet. So this is a good way to kind of get the word out. So that's an example. Here's a university incubator at Berkeley that is vouched for. There's about 6 people that they vouched for right in their community that are social enterprises. So, for example, if you're working with your university on your idea, they can vouch for you, and that character-based vouching, it really counts for a lot in this system. Now, what if you wanted to work with end beneficiaries? For example, here's a group in San Francisco. They do business training in their community. It's an NGO called the Mission Economic Development Agency. They vouched for this gentleman here named Victor. Victor got a starter loan of $5,000 in December of 2011. He wanted to start a coffee shop. He was unable to get that starter loan because as a recent immigrant, he didn't have a credit score that allowed him to do it. So he raised money on KIVA, and then like a lot of people, so it's 67 people from around the US and the world kind of raise money, and you can have conversations with people. But basically, as he repaid that first loan, 2 things happened. One, he qualified for a second loan now of double the amount, $10,000. And you can see him opening the store. And the second thing is that Victor can vouch for Rocio. Rocio is a member of his community that he knows well, that he believes in. And even if her credit score, like a lot of students' credit scores might not be, really strong quite yet, he believes in her character. Rocio would bring this vacuum cleaner on the city bus in San Francisco in between dropping your kids off at school and picking them up. She was missing appointments as a house cleaner, and she needed $3,000 to buy a car. So literally, this allowed her to buy a car, service more people per day. And now, Rocio has vouched for Eva, who sells at Bay Area flea markets. And so the whole question is can trust spread virally? And can we actually start spreading lower cost loans to people who are underserved today? Because, let's face it, credit score doesn't always capture character. And that's something that you guys, for folks who are working domestically, might think about. Internationally, this is a great example. This is someone who worked at CGI many, many years ago. He started an organization called Sanergy. Sanergy, you can see, creates these like porta potties. They're like they're called Fresh Life toilets. It's in one of the slums in Nairobi. And what's interesting is they figured if you can create a hygienic, dignified option for people to go to the bathroom, because today, there's a variety of ways that people go to the bathroom, but not of them all are safe, hygienic, etc. You could really not only, improve the dignity of the option, but also prevent a lot of the waterborne diseases, etc. in the slum. Well, they had a revenue stream. So, for example, this gentleman here, John, needed $425 to purchase his own Fresh Life toilet, and then he can charge about 3 cents per use in the slum. And then over the course of, you can see 14 months here, I know it's really small, he should be able to pay back that loan. and then be able to have this business where he's charging a little bit to use a safe, hygienic option. Now, what's really interesting about Synergy is not only do they, this is a really complicated diagram, but the really interesting thing is that they harvest the human waste every single day that comes here, and they sell it as fertilizer in the market. So that's yet another income stream. And this is just a broader thing that I think I'm really excited about, is now more and more social enterprises starting to think about that sustainability of that earned income stream and the diversifying their earned income stream, so you're not so dependent on whether or not a funder says yes or no, but you can show them a path of when you'll be off their funding. And I think that's what funders really, really appreciate. So that's a couple of examples there. With that, let me just kind of end with a few other pieces of advice. Basically, above all, if you're just looking for grants, so if you're not someone who can take 0% interest patient capital, go to Foundation Source. They have a bunch of grants, and you can actually see, you can sort through the database and actually see what the parameters are. So if you were doing something in education, you can sort by that, and that can be a really practical thing. The second is, if these business planning competitions aren't on your radar, there's a few here, there's many more, but GSBC, which is currently happening right now, Echoing Green, Business and Development, there are a few that KIVA applied for. We lost all of them in the beginning, but you know, it was a good chance for us to get a business plan together. And even though we lost, it was a really great educational opportunity and gave us some profile with other funders who were sitting in the audience. Early stage donors, they're so hard to find. But the two ones that I really love are Draper Richards Kaplan Foundation. Y Combinator now is starting to do something for nonprofits. And of course, individuals. You know, I heard in a previous session, where there's a will, there's a relative. So maybe they can hook you up. Crowdfunding is fantastic, and my colleague from CrowdRise, Gary's going to talk a little bit about that. And then here's something that I thought was really useful for me, which is I was so into my idea that I kept just directly asking for money. And you've probably heard this adage, if you ask for money, you'll get advice. But if you ask for advice, it increases the odds that you'll actually get money. And so many people really want to be approached in a partnership relationship, and that's just so important to remember. So really starting with a deep empathy and listening and understanding what they would like to fund. That was something that really served me well after first several months of really not getting anywhere on the fundraising circuit. And then above all, there's this concept in the book, Lean Startup. How many of you guys have heard of that book? Well, you know, they talk about product market fit. And product market fit is kind of the moment where whatever you're doing really starts taking off. Kind of, you saw how KIVA was flat and then it really started taking off. And you know, you'll know it, and one of the things I advise all social entrepreneurs is it's better to have 100 people really love what you do than 1,000 people kind of like what you do. So if you find that product market fit, then you're kind of set. You can show funders. Funders want all about successes, but sometimes you need money just to get to that product market fit. And what I would suggest, just like we did at KIVA for many, many months, we're all volunteers, we all had day jobs elsewhere, people were crashing on each other's sofas, none of us had healthcare when we did quit. Keep costs low until that moment of serendipity hits, until you find that product market fit, and you can find that first, say, 100 people or 10 people who absolutely love, who yell and scream if you went away. That is the moment I think you're looking for. And when you can show that, frankly, to funders, then it becomes so much more believable than just a concept or a business plan or an Excel model that's showing projections that aren't practical in real traction. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Premal. That was so insightful and helpful, and I hope you all wrote down or are taking photos. That's smart. All of the different places you can go to help fund your commitments. So next up, I'm thrilled to invite Gary Wohlfeill to the stage, who is the Director of Marketing for CrowdRise.
Thanks. All right. My name is Gary Wohlfeill, and I work at CrowdRise. I'm Director of Marketing there. And basically, I mean, how many people know CrowdRise in the room right now? so a few, decent amount. So what I want to talk about today is just a couple things. One, sort of how the nuts and bolts of the platform works. But more importantly, I want to talk about this, which is the power of the crowd, and more importantly, what this means, which is if you don't give back, no one will like you. And it's basically our motto at CrowdRise, because the whole point of CrowdRise and the whole direction of where we're going is trying to take antiquated ways of fundraising and make them fun, right? Make them engaging. Take what happens in sort of big, huge, old charities and make it more like what a Patagonia or a Nike would do, right? Engage your fundraisers, engage your donors, and that's the majority of what I'm going to talk about. So just a quick background on CrowdRise. So CrowdRise basically comes out of a 2009 New York Marathon run. Edward Norton, one of our founders, had 20 runners, and he wanted to raise money for Maasai wilderness conservation. And their goal was, there you go, and their goal was $1 million, right? So $1 million for 20 runners is pretty considerable. And what he wanted to do was do it in a way that wasn't just, banging down people's doors, guilting people into it, making it a burden. He wanted to make it fun and actually go out and figure out some way where he can, get the team members, and not only the team members, but the team members' networks to support what they were doing. And so they kind of looked around in the market, and there wasn't really anything out there that sort of fit the needs. So they basically built a little beta just for their team, and it didn't have a name or anything, and it was just for the 20 runners. And they sort of integrated it into social media and modern email marketing, and did a lot of promotions and incentives, and went out and really made people who were not only donating but also fundraising part of the effort, right? And engaged them like friends, not as a checkbook. And ended up raising something crazy like $1.6 million, right? So blew their fundraising goal out of the water. And so what came out of that was this idea, well, maybe this is something that we can take and build and give to other people, and they can use it as well. And that's really where CrowdRise comes out of. So CrowdRise really is a crowdfunding platform. There's basically two different ways you can use it. One is as a nonprofit. Anyone can go on and start a fundraiser for any of the 1.5 million 501c3s, right? So 99.9% of the users on CrowdRise are really do-it-yourselfers, right? They have a cause they care about, they're going on, they're creating a fundraiser, and they're raising money, maybe $300, maybe $3,000. The other piece of it is people who can go and create a fundraiser for good, right? And attach their bank account so that they're not going through a registered 501c3 in the US. So someone's house on your block burns down, you can start a fundraiser, raise money, and basically impact them and help them directly. So there's basically two options. So if you have a 501c3 status, you can start a fundraiser that benefits you and all your donors get receipts. If you don't, then you can still help. But really, the way crowdfunding works, and I think you've probably seen a lot of the models, and I'm actually using, did anybody pay attention to the bracket challenge that ended today? So I just grabbed one of the fundraising pages from that. So basically, it's a lot more than just a donate button on the page. So what crowdfunding is really all about is a couple things. So one, accessibility, right? You want to not only allow anyone to donate, but you want to allow anyone to engage with you and potentially fundraise for you, right? So it's on the internet, right? Which means that they don't have to be at your gallery, they don't have to be at your event. This is something that you can use that anyone in the world basically can come to, right? So the internet's not new, so that's nothing revolutionary. The next is, a story call to action, right? When we designed CrowdRise, we designed it to look great, right? Because we understand that people want to share things that look amazing, right? And so we really put a lot of effort in making the pages look amazing, and providing a lot of an opportunity for people to tell their story, right? And do it in a meaningful and an engaging way. And then the next part is basically just getting the word out, right? So connecting into all the major social platforms, right? Providing email drafts, providing tools, having access to all of your data, right? These are things that I think allow people to understand what they're doing, what's working, what's not, and then take the next step. So basically we take the approach by any means necessary. Attaching to every way of getting the word out is something we do in the platform. And then most importantly probably is the join the team functionality. So this really we feel is a bit of a game changer. So not only can you come to CrowdRise, start a fundraiser, and send people there to donate, your call to action can be to your very closest supporters, come start your own fundraiser, right? You'll get a page just like this that'll be a carbon copy of our story and our pictures, and then customize it, right? Upload your own picture. Explain to the people you're going to be communicating with why you are passionate about my cause. And then you basically build this team, right? And you take $25 donors and maybe turn them into $250 fundraisers, right? And that can be a game changer. Because it really, allows people to engage not just in opening up their wallet and putting a credit card number in. Now you can have people who can't donate, but can still support your cause and go up to their network. So now you have this, this pyramid effect where you're reaching out to your networks, they're reaching out to theirs, so on and so forth. But the key is, this story and call to action is personal, right? They're seeing the people that they know's face and story on the page, instead of just being directed to your website. If there's anything we've learned in the 3 years that CrowdRise has been around, is that friend-to-friend giving works, right? Like Boston Marathon, New York Marathon, Chicago Marathon, LA Marathon, Ironman Series, they all use CrowdRise as our official peer-to-peer fundraising platform. And something we always tell the charity team. So I don't know how familiar you are with how marathon runs and charity runs go, but basically you get a slot in the race and then you commit to raising a certain amount of money. So we work with a lot of partners in that space because those big events are great partners of ours. And one thing we always tell the charity teams is that if your runners are messaging, they will raise money. If they're not raising money, it's because they're not telling anyone about it. And it's absolutely 100% true. Friend to friend just works. And so being able to go out and find the supporters that understand what you're doing and are passionate and want to get involved, basically, you might land on my page and I'm a team member, and you may know nothing about the cause that I'm supporting, but you're probably going to get it because I'm asking, and you know me. So there's a lot to be said about sort of these interrelationships and how you can leverage them. And this is another sort of big theme, is how do we leverage technology? How do we leverage dollars? How do we leverage email to create campaigns that really can achieve the goals that you want? So now the fun part. So how do we make giving back fun, right? So how do we take it and make it notable? How do we engage people? How do we make campaigns that you want to forward to your friends? And how do we approach the fundraising space and modernize it and make it more the way that a Patagonia or a Nike approaches their customers to get them to buy something or to get to convert or get them to talk to them on social media and bring it to the fundraising space. I think that there's definitely, I think, a reaction to sort of being guilted into things, sort of having fundraising be a burden. And I think that the natural reaction that we're seeing, and again, 3 years, not 30, but it seems to be working, is that when you can approach people in a way that it feels uplifting, it's fun, and more importantly, it's sort of like a game, you get results. So just a few examples. One, be notable. And the way we define notable is, would you forward this to a friend, right? Is it just something you get in your email and you check it out and maybe you donate? Or is it something that would actually cause you to sort of take note? So being notable, one, this is Diana Nyad. She did a fundraiser on CrowdRise. She swam for 48 hours straight in Times Square, right? Very notable, but probably not something that any of us in the room could do. Maybe there's something, I don't know. But there's other ways of doing it. There's a couple of guys in CrowdRise who do this every year. Basically, they pledge to go to a horrible concert completely sober to raise money for MS. So this past year, they went to Backstreet Boys and DJ Pauly D. The year before that, it was Creep. And they do this every year. And they raise a decent amount of money every time they do it. And it's notable, right? Everyone who sees it says, can you believe what these guys do? And they've gotten into doing crazy videos. It's awesome. And they actually film going there, and they show them at the concert having a horrible time. Everyone who supports them loves it. You can't see here, but they have a bunch of friends and family who join the team just so they can send this great content to their friends, right? Because now they're part of the story. And it's proven people want to talk and tell stories. If you give them a good story, they'll tell it for you. How do we be engaged? How do we engage when engaged? So one of the things that we did when we designed the platform was build it in a way that was really sort of malleable, right? And you could interact with it, and you had things like a leaderboard, right? So here is a campaign that Lady Gaga's foundation did called Brave Stand. Basically, they asked people in their community to send in a writing on their arms. Why are they brave, right? And post it as their fundraiser pick, right? So now it's not somewhere off in an Instagram gallery or a Flickr gallery. It's right here on the page. Where now when somebody is so, basically does a piece of art on their arm and wants to send it around to everyone they know because they've been engaged by the campaign, now there's a call to action, which is donate, right? Support the thing that I'm supporting. And additional to that, they had some grand prizes and stuff like that, but the key was they reached out and they knew how to get people to engage with them initially, get over that first hurdle, right? And then once they're in the door, now you have a direct line of communication to them, right? Now they're part of the campaign. Another example is Breakfast with Piven. So Jeremy Piven's mom has a theater in Chicago where he learned acting. And so we wanted to go out to a very small list of people and get them super engaged in raising money for the theater. And so we decided, well, wouldn't it be great if everyone who started a fundraiser got a picture of Jeremy Piven's breakfast every morning? And so we did. We sent out an email and said, start a fundraiser and raise anything, and you'll start getting Jeremy Piven's breakfast in your inbox every morning. And within 48 hours, we had hundreds of fundraisers, just because I think most people wanted to see if we would do it, right? And we did. We got all of his breakfast. He was, eating crazy stuff like oatmeal with almond milk and an almond milk dandelion latte, I think hamming it up a little bit. But it was great and effective. And more importantly, now they expect an email, right? Now it's permission marketing, right? Now they're expecting Jeremy's breakfast in the morning, and we can use that to communicate, that we're getting close to goal, or hey, there's, he's giving away a signed poster, so on and so forth. Gamify. So you saw that leaderboard down at the bottom there. So that leaderboard basically changes. So out of the box, CrowdRise has a leaderboard at the bottom for your team, and it changes based on the amount raised. So what it allows you to do is use the platform to do really interesting things, right? So this was a Kristen Bell campaign for a separate screening she wanted to do of the new Veronica Mars movie. And so she came to us and said, well, what can we do? We're thinking about selling tickets. And I think they had 200 seats. And we said, well, don't sell tickets because you're going to cap it, right? You have so many seats at such a price, and then what? Make the screening exclusive for fundraisers only, right? No one can get in unless you're a fundraiser. So they did. And on top of that, the top 5 fundraisers, so basically you had to start a fundraiser and raise 500, right? If you didn't have the 500, it didn't matter. If you could raise it, you got an invite. And then the top 5 people who raised the most got to go across the street to a taco joint and hang out with Kristen Bell and the cast, right? So from $500 to, thousands of dollars, just because they wanted to see them jump into 5th place or 3rd place, right? And this happens real time. So leveraging the leaderboard to create competition and create little games, right? It makes people come back and refresh that leaderboard to see where they're at, right? And it works. Additionally, this is sort of a less high-profile example, but Hope to Haiti they do a mission trip to Haiti every year, and the only way you can go with them, right? Pay your own way and volunteer with them. Give up your time. The only way you can go is to raise $5,000 for them, right? So if you care about their cause and you want to go do the work on the ground, you have to raise $5,000. Only way to get in. And they raise tons of money every year with that model, right? Now it's a bit of a game. Now it's exclusive, right? If you're going to be in, you're in all the way. And when you can find those 100 people who have that passion, they can change the game, right? And they can really make your fundraiser grow in ways that you wouldn't have expected. And then, of course, this is a screenshot from the bracket challenge, right? So let's see what we can do with a $5,000 grand prize, right? And let's leverage that. So that's, and again, here we're pitting teams against each other so that, there's a start and an end. It's a game, it's fun, right? So you're engaging them not about just, hey, you really should donate, you haven't donated this month, please donate, or please sign up for a monthly donation. Now you're actually getting them into a game. Now it's, a bracket, sports, March Madness, right? And I think it ended over $60,000. So you take a $5,000 grand prize and you leverage that and raise over $60,000 for all the organizations in a challenge, right? So one of the things we always tell our partners is that if someone says, hey, I'll write a check, I'll donate $2,000 to you, don't just put it in the bank, leverage it, right? At least do a match campaign, right? At least launch a campaign and say, the next $2,000 will be matched 1-for-1, and send out a message about it, right? So always be looking at those things that you have in hand that you can leverage. And maybe you can do something even more interesting with it, right? And make it really interesting. And then messaging. So, I think we always say 2 things. You need a great campaign and call to action, and you need an audience, right? You've had the coolest campaign in the world, but if no one has seen it, you're not going to raise any money. So I think a core piece of any fundraising effort, whether you're the Red Cross or whether you're an individual raising money, is messaging. A lot of times we work with somebody who will say, well, how long should our campaign be? And our answer always is, how often can you message about it? Right? If you're going to message once a week for 4 weeks, you probably have a 5-week campaign. If you're going to message once at the launch, probably a week and a half, maybe. After that, no one's going back to it, because they're not being told about it. So we really believe that messaging is key. There's this concept that, if I build it, they'll come, and it just doesn't work for fundraising, right? You need to be going out there and leveraging the people that know what you do, leverage the people that know you, and letting their networks and your networks know about it, right? And it doesn't have to be things like, it doesn't have to be annoying, right? It can be fun. So like, here's something that we send out right around tax time, right? Give to any cause, and you're entered to win an invisible stapler, right? It's the dumbest prize that you ever, right? But at least you read that and you're like, what are they, really? And we actually ship like an empty box to the winner. And they call and say, where's the stapler? No, it's in there. Similarly, right? So we sent this email for Breakfast for Piven, and I think the subject line was something like a note from Jeremy Piven's breakfast. And the charity sent it out to their list, and it had by far the single highest open rate and click rate out of any communication they'd ever had since they started emailing 10 years ago. So doing things that, that I think that Patagonia and the Nikes of the world do, which is sort of try to get through the noise, right, can be applied to fundraising. And a lot of people don't do it because they think you gotta be serious, and it can't be, it can't be fun. It can't be something that people, sort of take a double look at. But we've seen that it's working for a lot of bigger organizations like CrowdRise. And then additionally, incentives, right? So we talked about the $5,000, in the bracket challenge. People go crazy over the dumbest incentives, things that don't cost you anything, right? We put up these plaques for people who hit the 2-year mark at CrowdRise, and we just named dumb stuff around the office. Like, this is the day's bullet, point was bent to the hallway, right? But people go crazy over this stuff. Like, we've had races who say, if you are the top fundraiser, we give you a paper crown delivered, right? And people actually battle for that paper crown. So incentives, I think, are really important. I think they make things fun. It's definitely the way that retailers and e-commerce approach their customers, is with an offer, right? And it doesn't always have to be, 20% off, right? It can be something interesting, and it doesn't have to be something that you have to pay for. It's an all. So basically, that's, I think those are the key elements altogether. Go to CrowdRise. It's super easy to start a fundraiser. There's basically 2 options: one for charities, one for attaching our bank account and downloading the funds directly. And yeah, ready for questions.
Much, Gary. That was also super helpful. So what we're going to do now is break up into groups of about 4 or 5 people. We're going to spend 10 minutes just chatting about the problems that you've all encountered with raising money for your commitments, and also would like you to discuss questions that you'd like to pose to our speakers. We'd love for you to speak to people you don't know, so try and mix it up a little bit. We only have 10 minutes, so you can turn your seats towards each other and get chatting. And I will let you know when we have 2 minutes
Why
Thank you so much. It looks like you're having very lively discussions, and I hope you'll continue them after the session. But let's definitely make most of this time. So we're going to call upon people to ask questions. We ask that you introduce your name, your college, and one sentence about your commitment, and then dive into your question.
Hey everyone, my name is Premal. I run an organization called Practice Makes Perfect. We build a national summer school replacement model in inner-city neighborhoods across the U.S. Actually, went to SLM Fellowship last night after I graduated right now. So 2 questions really quickly from all. For Tyler, he wants to know Elon Musk is the guy down the hall from you. And then from CrowdRise, how do we become one of the featured organizations on the CrowdRise?
Elon was not the guy down the hall from me. It's a bummer. He's also the founder of Tesla and SpaceX. So he's pretty amazing.
I got this one. So the question was, how do we end up on the homepage of CrowdRise? Email me. I mean, I can't promise anything. No, I mean really. So I mean, I think, and I was, I mentioned it like 5 minutes ago that I don't think you can underestimate the power of cool. So we like to feature cool campaigns, right? So so yeah, I mean, my email is gary@crowdrise.com, and I do things all the sales pitches. But yeah, so I mean, we basically, I mean, usually what happens is that we have partners we work with, and we're also sort of always scouring the site, looking for good stories. It's editorial, basically. So that's how it happens. Yeah, you can't buy it. So yeah.
Right, Evan, I'm going to have 2 questions. KIVA. I had a very interesting discussion with one of the KIVA executives before. Okay, by the way, we are kind of working something pretty close to KIVA, but well, not KIVA, but focusing on education, providing student loans for students. But the problem we have is that student loans have, of course, you cannot invest in, but the payback period is so long. We want to talk about 10, 15 years, sometimes 20 years, or sometimes, I mean, you don't know what's going to happen, right? And the question for me is that it's easy to think about KIVA because, yeah, payback time, say 10 months or 14 months at all. How will this work for institution like ours, where the payback period is going to be pretty longer than that? And my name is Kenny. Thanks.
So a few years ago, we realized that we can make a huge impact if, in addition to, say, businesses or social enterprises, if students could raise money on the platform. And what we realized was just that it's not 1-year loan terms. So we now have students who pay back over 10 years or maybe 15 years with a 6-year grace period, meaning they don't have to pay back for the first 6 years. And we've started this in probably 24 countries around the planet. And as those first students pay back, then 2 things happen. We'll continue to do more students, but second, hopefully we can prove to the local banking sector that students will pay back their loans. Because right now it's a chicken and egg problem, which is because there's no repayment track record, banks won't do it in many countries around the planet. And because banks won't do it, there's no repayment track record. So that's where all of us, the internet community, can break that logjam and start lending to students on platforms like KIVA or Vitana recently just did that as well. Now, what's interesting is it's so difficult to, what Vitana found is it's difficult to have a 2-front war, meaning you have to go around and help develop student loan products on the ground all around the planet, and you have to build a consumer brand and get people to the website. And sites like ours, only 3 to 5% of the people who visit will make a donation or a loan, a small fraction, just like on Amazon, a small percent will actually make the actual purchase there. And so it's very hard to build a big brand as well as create these student loan products. And so what Vitana has recently done is they've decided to shut down their website and have all the students go onto the KIVA website. And they're going to focus full-time on students in the developing world and helping them get hooked up on KIVA. So that's something that you can do. Isaac.
Just a quick question is, CrowdRise, is there a catch? Is there like a startup fees that you have to, or is there a percentage of the
Got it. So the question was, how does CrowdRise get paid? How do we keep the lights on? Yeah, so basically the way it's working right now is that there's a free model, right? There's no upfront cost, and then it's based on a percentage of the donation. Right now I think for nonprofits it's 5% plus credit card. But then there's basically monthly plans where they can sort of engage with us and pay a monthly subscription. They get cheaper pricing because of that. And then right now the actual fundraising for non-501c3s is a relatively new product for us. So it's just launched. So right now I think there's just the 5% model, but we're releasing right now the ability for your donors to cover those fees as part of the donation. So what we're trying to get to is basically fee-free fundraising, essentially. So, yeah.
Hi, my name is Jasmine. My commitment is Mocha Origin, and we're trying to increase the international market for Yemen and Mocha in order to improve Yemen's economy and sustainability. So one of the questions I have, and it was a mutual feeling among the group that I was talking to, was overcoming the reservation of asking our student friends who don't really have funds and asking them for money for these students.
Yeah. So the question was, I think you can take the first shot at it, but the question was how do we get past the worry that we're going to bug all our friends who don't have money to get for it?
Sure. So we realize that most social entrepreneurs won't have the benefit of, say, a celebrity or a lot of wealth around. And so the catch with KIVA is that you have to pay back the loan. But because there's so much money being repaid, for example, this year over $100 million will be repaid to over 1 million KIVA lenders. They turn around, come into the website, and they get emails every month saying they have money in their KIVA account. And they're looking through the website, looking to re-lend that money and help someone else. So our model does not rely on you having to go to your friends. It's great if you do that. We appreciate that. But the model, and so here's what I've seen on a platform like Indiegogo, like a crowdfunding, about 10% of the projects get fully funded. 90% don't get their funding. On KIVA, it's split. Over 90% get fully funded. However, the catch is that you have to pay the money back. And most of the money on KIVA as it ages is just previous years of recycling repayments. So there's just a lot of money, but the catch is that you have to pay it back. And that's the challenge right now that I see out there.
Yeah. And then I would just add to that I think the idea of, I think that's a nice call to action that you can have is donate or start a fundraiser, right? So, if you want to support us but don't have the funds just to give to us, sort of fundraiser and hit your network with it. So you sort of distribute that negative, right?
My name is Christine, and I'm coming from Hope International Living School in Dubai. And my initiative is basically poverty alleviation for female street vendors started in Haiti because that's the country where I was raised in my family. And I guess my question is it's so typical for us to discuss funding revenue streams like crowdfunding, friends and family. But one thing that I'm experiencing right now is drawing the line between accepting funds from someone who has an altering vision from a project. Because you're caught between you need the funds and you're still trying to understand the end vision of your goal. And so you're not sure if that mentorship is actually coming with great responsibility. So I guess my question is how do you draw the line between accepting those funds at the cost, I guess, of the soul and your end vision?
Right. So the question basically is how do you receive funds without giving away your control or sort of muddying the vision?
Yeah. If you think of the analogy of a tricycle, right, the big wheel in front, the funding comes first, everything, sorry, not funding, the mission comes first. Yeah, totally, drink this Kool-Aid here, but honestly, the mission comes first and everything's in support of that, the funding, the governance, the team. Now, what I've found is that oftentimes, you can, what we find with KIVA is that if you really want to make the biggest impact possible in poverty alleviation, you have to have an inclusive tent. And so my original vision, in many ways, was not the best possible vision. And by including other people having to co-create with us, we've actually been able to achieve more impact at scale than if we were to just stick to the way that I wanted it personally. And so there is some wisdom there, but if their intention is good, and I think you can probably get a sense of that, I tend to want to invite people in to co-create it, because the problems are so big, and it's so much easier to do it together than to try to do it.
My name is Dallas Bauer. I'm from Casper, Wyoming, and my commitment is Sexual Violence Awareness Network. And something that we talked about that I really resonated with and that I struggle with not only on a fundraising basis, but on any kind of awareness level, is getting the message outside of the same group. Because one person shares, and then they know the same people, and then they share, and then it's the same group, and they're getting hit over and over and over again. So do you have any advice on how to avoid that?
Yeah, so the question is, how do we break out of the initial networks, right? So if I engage my friends, how do we, and it's not the same people messaging over again. I mean, I think when you challenge somebody, so if the challenge is, okay, commit to me that you're gonna start a fundraiser and you're gonna raise $500 for me, and they get to 300 and they hit that cap, having a goal, having a fundraiser goal really makes people have to think creatively. So maybe that's what they think about, I actually haven't hit this professor is really cool that, maybe he's got some, or, and the other part of that too is I think there's always opportunity for partnerships. Guaranteed there's going to be either companies or blogs or somebody who has a communications, as a channel who, not necessarily is going to give of themselves, money to your project, but maybe they have some interest in seeing it come to light. And so, the ask doesn't always have to be money. Sometimes the ask can be a message about it, right? And that can sometimes be almost as impactful as money.
Okay, my name is James Hedges, and commitment is stopping female genital mutilation from the side community. And my big challenge and the question is that it's an initiative to stop something. Before I can even get into the phase of saying that I want to measure how much it's gone, how much it's going to, what is going to really happen, how do you even try to convince people to give you the money to be able to stop something that has been talked about for decades and it's not stopping?
Right. So the question is, how would be, without metrics and without, sort of, I don't know if it's not a new cause, right? So how do you get people to give and support the cause when it's sort of a long-term issue and there's no direct results to show?
In the issue of FGM, one thing I would contemplate if I were in your situation is looking. What I observe on the planet right now is there's so many social enterprises doing things, but what we really need to do is kind of say, which ones are working, how can I replicate their model? And there's deep, deep honor in replicating someone else's model instead of starting your own model. In one model, for example, in West Africa and Senegal is Tostan. And Tostan now has received a ton of funding from so many people. And if you could bring that to East Africa, to Kenya, and replicate the Tostan model, I imagine Tostan would share their funders with you. And so you could plug into that, and they've done incredible work with, FGM. And so that's one thing I would look at is if you're running into walls, in some ways, maybe the market's saying, hey, geez, from the point of view, there's just so many subscale projects, how can you combine forces with other things that maybe represent yourself as a replication of something that has actually shown scale, that has a funding community, and bring it to a new area. Oftentimes, I know foundations are very excited about that and backing talented entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Hello everyone, my name is Tammy Charles. I am the co-founder of Wohlfeill, and my commitment is to utilize sustainable farming technologies to help feed, educate, and empower people. And I kind of want to look at it from a different perspective. I know that people have started really great companies and initiatives, and we're in the starting phase of really trying to raise money for our supplies, our inventory, and besides like the crowdfunding platform. And I know we've spoken to some investors, and what other things and methods did you utilize to really raise capital to get your business to drive forward?
Right, so the question is, outside of sort of crowdfunding, how do you get investment to get off of that? I mean, it's a good question, right? It's a big question.
I can say as a nonprofit, so we weren't unable to offer anyone, a rate of return. So there was no investors in KIVA. It's a public good. And we were terrible fundraisers. I mean, you know, sometimes I'd have lunch with people, and you hope they'd write you a check, nothing, you know, it was just, so honestly, one, interesting, how do you keep your costs low? How do you engage everyone? I think, you know, ink is cheap on the internet, so many more people, advisors, co-founders, haven't really invested. I think quarterly newsletters, which provide a sense of your progress, or monthly newsletters, with then at the very bottom, 3 asks. The 1-minute ask, hey, please tweet this. The 3-minute ask, use, you know, we have a campaign going on CrowdRise. And then if you have 3 hours and want to get involved, that kind of ask. You know, it's ways of chunking it up or smallifying the problem so you're not asking for so much and building that thing. I will say back in the day when we were getting started, because no one would donate to us, and we literally just like, I mean, we have to pay for our servers, right? Or like get people on healthcare insurance. We threw big parties on e-bikes. That was before, I guess, whatever method people go to parties now. And what was amazing is you could charge money at the door, suggested donations. I know, and we would like do it in multi-city. We'd have volunteers who would be advisors or kind of KIVA advocates, and they'd be throwing their parties. And you know, so it was volunteers managing volunteers who were, and it also had the benefit of getting the word out because people will open up emails that have a party invitation to it. So it was really interesting. It was a way to then get the message out. So that was one stream funding is events.
All right, I think we're all thinking about this time.
Great. Hey guys, if we can be helpful, I know we'll be up here. Also, you can find us on things like Twitter and